Good Friday afternoon to you, 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. Hope your weekend's off to a great start. Browns getting ready for their preseason game against the Washington Commanders. Deshaun Watson will be the quarterback, at least for a couple of series. Today on ESPN's First Take, Sam Acho on the quarterback in the NFL, best position to have a bounce-back season.
I think it's going to be Deshaun Watson. Last year, had 7 touchdowns and 5 picks. And I get it. He only played the last 6 or 7 games of the season, but he struggled. He looked rusty. He didn't really look. He really did look like a shell of himself is what we saw when I was watching Deshaun Watson. We were all watching, anticipating what he was going to look like. And you could tell that he hadn't played football for a very long time. But what has he had? He's had those 6 games. He's had an entire offseason. Now he has his receivers, his weapons, more chemistry, more time. Amari Cooper, Elijah Moore, right? David Njoku, you're getting more time with your weapons. And also, there's not a lot of noise right now coming out of Cleveland. We're talking about all the other teams, talking about Baltimore, we're talking about Cincinnati. And it's almost like one of those situations where you just put your head down and work. And sometimes those are the best situations to be in. And so when I think of who's going to have the best bounce back season, I think it's the guy who a few years back before what we all saw happen over the last couple years, this dude was one of the best, if not the best, top 3, 4, 2, whatever quarterback statistically in the NFL. And so I think he's going to get back to form based off of getting reps and also having those weapons with him with chemistry.
Well, and the one thing that's unstated there is they're going to tailor the offense around him. Let's welcome in G. Bush, 92.3 The Fan, as well as the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. Everything is pointing the way Browns fans want it to for Deshaun Watson. And I keep saying it, more national people are starting to say, oh, he's only 27. He's probably going to be what he was.
Slowly but surely. A lot of times people don't come around to, after they see it first. Everybody's in this prove it first situation. Everybody needs to see it first. But one thing that you start to look at is the additions that the Cleveland Browns made. You look at the roster, you look at the position groups, and you start to say, well, how bad can Deshaun Watson be if he has one of the best lines and one of the best the best running back in the game? How bad could Deshaun Watson be now that they're tailoring the whole offense to him and he's involved in it? How bad could Deshaun Watson be if he's been part of the OTAs, he's been part of training camp, and him and Coach Stefanski are in lockstep of what they feel comfortable with running? And you come to the conclusion that he should probably play well. And that's not something that's a hot take or anything. It's you just go back and look at what he was doing in Houston. If you go back and watch what his skill set is and you go back and say, okay, well, was he injured that whole time? No. Did he sustain some sort of, setback in terms of, is he, worried about the legal stuff? No, that looks like his majority passed him. So you have to extrapolate and say, well, listen, he just sat 2.5 years out. He couldn't play. He came back in the middle of the season when guys are in mid-season form, mid-season peak, mid-season shape, and he struggled a little bit. But there were times where you still saw it last year that he looked like, that's Deshaun Watson. You saw it in flashes and brief moments. But, I would fully expect Deshaun Watson to play very well this season. And if he does so, the Cleveland Browns are going to be a tough team to beat and a tough team to play in the AFC.
Would agree with that. Along those lines, Mike Clay, ESPN, has ranked the position groups, and we'll take a look at some of them a little later. Right now, let's look at the quarterbacks. He ranks Kansas City 1, that's Mahomes, Buffalo 2, Allen, Burrow 3, Hurts 4, Herbert 5, Lamar 6, Rodgers 7, and Jacksonville 8. Deshaun Watson 9. So top 10 is fair based on, what he's been. If they get top 10 quarterback play with this roster, they're in contention in the AFC.
Right there. They're right there where they want to be. And like you said, when we were doing this before, how many times did you see Deshaun Watson in the 20s, late teens? Now all of a sudden, season is rolling around. And, there's not really too much clickbait to put out there. You don't need hot takes. You got all the footage you need at training camp, right? You got preseason games you could talk about. Now all the writers, all the serious writers are back to serious business. And everybody knows Deshaun Watson is not a 25th rated quarterback, or, he's not somewhere in the low teens. They got him in the top 10 right here. And now you'll see a lot of other guys start to kind of mimic this behavior because it's the off season. You got to write something. You got to figure out some sort of angle. Trust me, doing a Browns blog every single day is very difficult in the summer, especially with the way the Guardians look. So I get what they're doing and how they're moving. But now all of a sudden, it's funny how Deshaun Watson is creeping back into that top 10 and hasn't even thrown a pass yet.
So we're going to see him some in this second preseason game, week 1 preseason, second for the Browns. What do you need to see from Deshaun Watson to feel good?
Man, I want to see the command. I want to see the excitement with people around. I want to see him, and it's the first game. I get it. I want to see him play with a little emotion. I want to see him get the guys in and out of the huddle. No pre-snap motion penalties. If guys are getting guys lined up correctly, no guys off the line of scrimmage when they should be on the line of scrimmage, now covering up the tight end, all of that stuff. I want to see crisp passes, and I want to see the ball on the money. And most of all, I want to see scoring drives. That's what I want to see. I want to see some good drives going down to get some points, and it looks like he is a guy at full command of what he's got going on. So for me, I'm just looking for that crispness and the confidence. Because to me, the whole goal of preseason for the Cleveland Browns with Deshaun Watson is we want to make sure that he is confident in what we call in the huddle, confident when he's saying it in the huddle, when he's telling his teammates, confident that he can get people in the right positions and then make the routine plays and to move the chains. That's what I want to see today.
Yeah, I want this to look like his offense. I want it to look like I feel comfortable. This is what we're going to do. All right, let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey, Dave, Frank from Cleveland. I just want to touch base on a few things. One, we draft these guys, even though they're later round picks. Let's see what they got. I think Demetric Felton Jr. will be great at catching the ball out of the backfield with his juke move. Number 2, just say DeJuan Jones sort of takes over the left tackle spot, What would the trade value on the market be for Jedrick Wills? And number 3, Deshaun Watson, he's going to have a bounce back year. If anything, letting the 2 years off, preserve his body any, with all that pounding and stuff. Like you said, he's been doing it his whole life. It's like riding a bicycle. That's what he says. So anyways, Dave, great show, brother. I love you. And you be safe out there because it's the jungle, bro. Love you.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. G. Bush, Felton was a guy I went from saying, man, I'm not sure how he gets on the roster. He looked pretty good. I feel a lot better about the running back position with him. DeJuan Jones, you can't teach 6'8", 360 with guys that can move their feet. So let's see what Bill Callahan can do with him.
DeJuan Jones was the talk of the town, toast of the town the other week, the way he played ball. No sacks, 70-something snaps, no pressures. He's caving down the whole right side of the line. I'm inclined to agree with the caller. I would like to see DeJuan Jones get some left tackle reps, right tackle reps, even if it's just for the fact of saying traditionally, Jedrick Wills has been injury prone his first 3 years. He's had ankle injuries. Let's not talk about Jack Conklin. Jack Conklin has had injuries throughout his entire career. So, and some of them nagging, some of them were a little more serious than others, but I want him to get double duty. I want him to be rotating in there. Demetric Felton is a funny case study because it just goes to show you what can happen if people get injured. You take a guy like Jerome Ford, who everybody was talking about was going to be that guy, and the Browns were really high on him. They didn't need to go out and get a veteran running back or anything. He has a hamstring injury, and you know how it is. Camp hamstring is the soft tissue injuries. They just take a long time to heal. It's like you could tweak it. You could be right back on the IR or right back on the bench, so to speak. So Demetric Felton took advantage of his opportunities in the Hall of Fame game. I thought he looked more explosive than he did last year. I think he looks more – it looked like a guy who had been in the league for 3 years playing against professionals, and you could tell he had been playing against professionals when he was playing against the 3s and the 4s. Like, it was just a different level. The vision was different. It looked like he knew what he was doing. And you couldn't have always said that the last couple of years. So, anytime they're going to play you in these preseason games, on the opposite end of it, Schwartz didn't look like he was a pro. Jordan Elliott didn't make any plays. And that's the worst thing you can do when you are a person that's fighting for a position on this roster. You can't come in these games and not do nothing. And I know a lot of people say these games don't count, but they do, because if Jordan Elliott would have came out and did what he needed to do, they wouldn't have got a Shelby Harris. They gave him an opportunity in the preseason to say, hey, look, I got this position. Don't even worry about it. Go ahead. Y'all might as well just go ahead, get some, we cool, we straight. Didn't show it. Did not show it. So same with Anthony Schwartz. You should be demoralized if you're in there in the fourth quarter. So, to me, I think that we're going to get to see some of these young guys. I'm interested in seeing a lot of carries from Kelly. I thought he played well last game too. So we're going to get a chance to see some of this stuff. And I know a lot of people, don't count. But for a team that has all of this on the line, I'm looking at every single thing, because that's what the ownership is looking at when it comes to front office, general manager, and players move forward.
Yeah, and I think both Felton and Kelly make you feel a little better if Ford's only out a week or two, that you don't need to go and try to find something. Let's take a look at this. So the Browns have worked out several players. This is from Aaron Wilson, NFL national reporter. They worked out running back Wes Hills, running back Aaron Shamklin, and Jordan Wilkins, the most known of that with the Colts. They also worked out Nate Meters. He was here on as a kind of a special teams guy, practice squad guy, as well as Colby Richardson. So they're still looking at some of the running backs. Again, there's no rush. I think they want to see more from Demetric Felton and John Kelly. The one thing I've said about Kelly is he's been on the practice squad 3 years. You don't keep guys on the practice squad if you don't think they can play in the league.
Right. Like, he's been on there quite a few years in a row. And he played well last year. This is the great thing about it. And now people don't realize this. If you do play Demetric Felton, right? Think about what you have there. Like, you got a guy that could be a receiver. You got a guy that could be, running back. And right now, when you got Deshaun Watson, see, everything elevates a little bit. You know what I'm saying? Everything is notched up. Now, you're going to see Demetric Felton with the first team line, with Deshaun Watson, with other receiving threats. Now, when you get that elevation from the threes and the twos to now you in the penthouse with the big dogs, with the ones, it's a lot less crowded. Hey, you got a little more room over here. Like, wow, man, ain't nobody checking me. I'm coming out the back. No one's looking for you. Ain't nobody looking for you. Hey, catch the ball and keep it moving. So, it's a great opportunity for him. And Kelly is another guy. He runs hard. I like what he's done. And the Browns, I would wholeheartedly say, look, if they say, look, we're going to keep all of these dudes and just rock with what we got, let's be clear. Nick Chubb don't need to play it down in preseason. Keep him on ice and get him ready to when the first game of the season comes around. But these young guys might be thrust into a position where they got to play, and I'm interested to see what they got tonight.
Yeah, I would give Nick Chubb a ball cap and make him Stump Mitchell's assistant for the preseason. You go and coach him up with Stump, and we'll see you come the 10th of September.
Clipboard Chubb. That's what we want to see.
Yep. All right, G. Bush and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with G. Bush from 92.3 The Fan and the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey, fellas. Have you guys talked much about whether Deshaun Watson should limit his running with the ball in order to preserve his health? or is his game predicated on his ability to throw and run the ball just too important to the team's success? I know I cringed last year when he had plays that were geared towards him running the ball. The season goes from very promising to quite bleak if he were to miss numerous games this year, or any year for that matter, not to mention all that guaranteed money on the table at risk. Go Browns!
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. G. Bush, I want him to run to threaten the defense, but he has to be able to see. The hits that he sees aren't the ones that he can get out of that. It's the ones you don't see coming that are a problem for a quarterback that's mobile like Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to be using him in some sort of, like I would say, over-the-top, run-heavy scheme where they're running him on zone reads and option plays and direct, quarterback power on the goal line. Those things, they're not going to run. I think one of the things that, the offensive line has to get in, a rhythm of is he's a quarterback that's going to look to extend plays. So in one down part about Deshaun's game is he'll hold the football in order to get guys open downfield, but yet and still that tends to lead to a lot of sacks. When you look at his sack numbers, he's one of the most sacked quarterbacks while he's been in the league. And that's one of the things that he has to work on because he is holding the ball. So it's a risk reward. Yes, you may get more plays, chunk plays, 50 yards, 70 yards, things like that, explosive plays. And you want to be aggressive. You don't want to take that away from somebody's game because that's what makes him so dangerous. But at the same time, you don't want them guys to hold on to the ball. Now you got the backside end coming to the club and strip sacking you, and you don't see blindside defenders coming. And then you get a lot of holding penalties too when you hold the football, especially when guys don't know where you're at behind them. So those things are always something you want to think about. But I think Kevin Stefanski will be very smart about the way he runs them. You may see a couple of plays if they get in a specific formation where they think they can exploit it. They'll just say, yeah, we'll audible that and check to that and we'll run it. But when you got a guy like Nick Chubb back there in the offensive line that, can really knock guys off the ball, you're not really interested in your quarterback being a primary run threat. To me, even teams like Josh Allen, right? Josh Allen is way bigger than Deshaun Watson, very difficult to tackle, but he's a monster in the open field. I believe they lean too much on him. I don't want you out here just running around just to run around. I need your scrambling to be strategic. If that's moving and change when guys get out of their rush lane, or if no one's open on a bootleg, hey, just beat the defense into the spot and get a first down, get a new set of first downs. That's where I like to see Deshaun Watson be the most effective, is extending plays, running when you need to extend the drives if nothing is there, and eliminate some of the wear and tear on your body. Mind you, he does have 2 ACL surgeries. Once in college, and he had one with the Texans, so that's something you got to keep in mind as well.
Yeah, but again, I'm with you. Don't take any undue hits. Only hits when you really need to take them. All right, 4 things to watch offense against the Commanders. This is from Sports Illustrated. Number 1, does Deshaun Watson look comfortable? We've talked about that already. Number 2, Elijah Moore makes his debut. Number 3, which wide receiver will step up? And number 4, can DeJuan Jones have a repeat performance? G. Bush, I want to see Elijah Moore, and I want to see how that chemistry has developed. I'm curious as if we see. I think we'll see more and I want to see him and Watson working together.
Yeah, Elijah Moore has been the talk of the camp. Offensively, he's been the guy who's garnered most of the headlines because of what he's able to do. They've moved him in the side. They've moved him to the slot. He's played outside at the X in the Z position. He's played. He's been in the backfield. He's motioned in the backfield. They've run screens with him out of the backfield, tunnels, screens, bubble screens, whatever you want to do. He's a guy, and you notice the quick twitch nature. You notice the playmaking ability when he gets the ball. And you notice how much separation he creates by the fact that he is such a good route runner, as well as a guy that has that speed to add to that. So I think when you watch this game, you're going to see a lot of Elijah Moore. I think, I'm anxious to see myself who Deshaun Watson will gravitate to. It's kind of like back in the day. Remember when Hollywood Higgins wasn't a great practice player, and a lot of coaches because he wasn't a great practice player, they weren't going to put him in the game. But it got to a point where, injuries and the schedule and your record really dictated, okay, let's see what he got. And we found out that him and Baker Mayfield had a tremendous chemistry. It wasn't the fact that Hollywood was the biggest, the fastest, the strongest. It was the fact that Baker Mayfield would trust where he was going to be at, and they had this uncanny ability to come up with big plays. Every quarterback has a guy that they feel super comfortable with. So I'm anxious to see if that's going to be Moore or that's going to be Cooper, DPJ, somebody, right? I'm going to watch out for that. And as far as DeJuan Jones, I think he's a guy that should be getting reps at both positions. I think he can still keep that up. One thing that you can't, like you said, you can't coach guys that are strong, big, and are going to be able to do that to you. So he's always going to be big. It's just up to you what your plan of attack is, because his arms are just so long that when he punches on the defensive end, it's like it stops their momentum and they automatically just fall forward. It's just, and then he lays on them. But he has great feet, played basketball, and as a defensive end, anytime I'm going up against a guy and I see the scout report, there's two guys that I might have a long day with. One of those guys, if you were a former defensive lineman, that is now transferred over to offensive line, because now I know, I'm like, that you got feet. You played on the D line, and the other guy is a guy who knows how to play basketball at some point in his life. I know for a fact you got feet worked in, because if you can dribble and move the way you want to at the same time without traveling, I know you can mirror somebody on the defensive line. So he has the tools. I'm anxious to see if he can pull it off 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah, 6'8", 360, nimble feet. Yeah, that's not. Sounds like a long day for a defensive lineman.
Yes, sir.
We mentioned Mike Clay's position rankings a little bit earlier, so let's take a look at these. These are really interesting. ESPN, Mike Clay. So interior defensive line, they have the Browns up at 16 now. They were arguably the worst, probably not even arguably, they were the worst interior defensive line a season ago. Edge rusher, they are now ranked 4th behind Pittsburgh, the Chargers, and Dallas. Cornerback, the cornerback group for the Browns ranks 5th. Jets, Eagles, Packers, Cowboys. You could even argue the Browns are a little bit higher. Overall, they rank this roster 5th in the NFL. They've got Philadelphia, Buffalo, the Chargers, Dallas, and then the Browns. That's probably fair. Now, they got to go out and figure out how to win games, but the talent is there.
Look, I mean, just go by their numbers. Myles Garrett is the number 1 rush end, according to PFF. Zadarius Smith is the number 13 rush end with PFF. Go to the interior. They just add Shelby Harris. You take a look at Dalvin Tomlinson. I believe Dalvin Tomlinson is the 12th overall ranked defensive tackle. When you look at Shelby Harris, he's the 17th ranked defensive tackle. So if you looking at as totality in total, and you have Albo coming off the bench, guess what? He's a guy who had 34, 35 pressures. His win rate as a pass rusher is extremely high, and he has a good pass rush grade. So when you look at it across the board, the Cleveland Browns have arguably the best defensive line. No other team has 2 guys within the top 20 in terms of defensive tackle grades like the Browns do. And it just goes to show you what you can do when you're focused on making the most out of your season. You get efforts like this. Andrew Berry may have not hit on every one of his regular picks, the 3rd round picks. We talked about that a lot. But one thing you cannot poo-poo, or you can't diminish or marginalize is the fact that he's getting free agents. And his trade game is kind of nice. He's getting trades. You think he got Zadarius Smith for free, Amari Cooper for free. You just got Shelby Harris as well as Dalvin Tomlinson. And guess what? Javon Hargrove was one of the defensive tackles that got, I believe, $80 million. I think Dalvin Tomlinson got 54. So you tell me for $60 million, you've got the number 12 and the number 17 defensive tackles according to PFF for $60 million. And another team paid Hargrove about $80 million just as one defensive tackle, great pass rusher, but only a 48 when it comes to stopping the run. And you know that's what the Browns need. You got two of the best run stuffers, and you got two edge guys, and you got a top 5, top 6 rotation in terms of corners. The Browns, I never thought I would say it because I thought the offense had the most potential, given the fact that you already had Chubb, and now you're going to have a really good line with Deshaun Watson. I actually think the Browns defense might have more upside than the offense, which is crazy.
You're a guy that played defensive line in college. When you look at that, there's almost an embarrassment of riches with guys that get off the ball fast. I mean, you can see what Schwartz wants, what Jim Schwartz wants. They're going to be in the backfield, and it is going to be a long day for offensive linemen and quarterbacks that are facing this defensive line.
Oh, yeah. Nowadays, instead of them dictating to us, we're dictating where the ball goes. And and I've played in both systems, in the 3-4 and the 4-3, where we went from a lateral defense to the 3-4, where we're trying to keep people off our linebackers. And we were basically playing what we call a rope-a-dope technique, which is, hey, they're going to make a mistake, keep making them make plays. So, they're getting 2, 3, 4 yards on the ground. But that was the design of the defense. But when you started talking about an attacking style defense, now you're going to play the run on the way to the quarterback. We're not worried about what hole the running back is going. All we want to do is push the offensive lineman, get in the backfield, be disruptive. That ball will bounce or spill, and you got guys rallying to the football, and they can't be outflanked because your defensive ends are out wide. So now they're forced to be patient, running inside zone, play after play after play after play, trying to get the run game going. And that gets frustrating to a lot of coordinators. They're like, listen, I can't get outside. My play action is working, but I want the chunk plays. I want the 20 and 30 yard downfield looks. And guess what? Sometimes they get greedy, and that's when turnovers happen. And that's when penalties happens as well, especially when you got those long drives. So I think up front it's going to be a really great year. And I think this is why a lot of people have Myles Garrett as the defensive player of the year, because of this scheme and what Jim Schwartz is going to let them do.
Can't wait to see it. G. Bush, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much.
All right, man.
G. Bush, make sure you check him out. 92.3 The Fans, The Barbershop, Saturdays 8 until noon. You can also catch him Monday through Friday, Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show, 11 to 1. We're going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Film breakdown, video analysis of the newest Browns, Shelby Harris with Lance Reisland. Sports4CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns here on Sports4CLE. Time to take a look at the newest Brown and what he might mean in this defense. I'm talking about defensive tackle Shelby Harris. Browns signed him yesterday, a one-year contract. We're going to take a film analysis video breakdown of him. Whenever we do that, we welcome in Lance Reisland from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Lance, what I have seen of Shelby Harris, he looks like a perfect fit for what you and I have taken a look at as far as Jim Schwartz' defense and what he likes to see up front.
What he does, he's that other tackle now. So there's a couple things that he does very well. First of all, he's very active, but his number one quality without question is his hands and his ability to stop the run. He's really good in the pass rush and in stopping the run with those hands of his. They're very strong. They're very violent. He gets rid of blockers. I don't know if he's going to be that much of a pass rusher, but what he's going to do is he's going to give the Browns on the other side of Thompson, he's going to get the Browns to second and long and third and long, and then allow those pass rushers to get home. So if you look at one spot on that defense, maybe the linebackers are going to have to prove themselves, but on paper, they needed another guy. The other thing that I think he does is the guy they've been really impressed with down in camp is Jordan Elliott. Physically, he looks a lot bigger this year. I think he's done a really good job of improving his strength and his thickness and he's had a really good camp. Now he gets to progress and be a part of the rotation along with some other guys. But now they have two legit NFL run-stopping 330-pound guys that can really stop the run and allow this pass rush to get home on second, third, and long.
So again, Harris, let's take a look at this first clip. What do you see here? What do you like about it, and how does this fit with what the Browns want to do?
Well, you're gonna see right here is that he gets circled here. This is what he does very well. He gets off the football. He's very explosive. He gets his hands immediately on the guard, and when he gets his hands in your guard, he gets it into the chest of the guard and consistently moves that guard backwards. And as you can see here, he makes the tackle here, but he's constantly in the backfield by pushing that guard or getting in the gap. So again, great extension, great get off. Finds the ball. Because of that extension, he's able to throw the guard off and actually make the play too. You know, you're talking about a guy with 24.5 sacks. He's had lots and lots of tackles in his career, both assisted and solo. He's an active guy. He's a run stopper. So whatever you get in the pass rush game is going to be, is going to be extra. But this guy is really active in the run game, and you can see his violent hands right here, which I think is his number one quality.
The other thing that when we were looking at the Jim Schwartz Eagles defense, he's playing in the back. You know, you've pushed that line of scrimmage back a couple of yards, and that's exactly what the Browns are looking for. When we look at the second clip, technique, take us through this, what you see with this second clip.
Well, short area quickness. So he's going to stun inside here. Again, he's down on the bottom of the screen, the defensive tackle. He's going to stun inside, and he gets on the shoulder, and he shows great explosion, great lateral movement. He's able to bend to the quarterback. Again, he's 300 pounds. He's not the tallest guy in the world, so he gets great leverage. He gets underneath offensive linemen. He's got a great motor. He plays with great explosion. So that first play you saw him almost two-gapping and getting into the guard. Now you're going to see some of the things he's going to do as well with Schwartz, which is blow gaps, angle and stun inside. He's going to loop. He's going to twist. He's going to do a bunch of different things. So the first play kind of shows his strength and his technique with his hands, and now he's just getting off the ball and penetrating, being a one-gap penetrator. And again, he's very hard to block. He has great bend, and he's very strong.
Again, take a look. I mean, you've got him 8-9 yards into the backfield, reestablishing that line of scrimmage, and that's kind of what Jim Schwartz wants the defense to do. Let's take a look. This next clip, what do we see, and take us through the points here with this next clip.
This is a Jim Schwartz look here. This is going to be a wide 3, wide 5 on a third down and long, and he's going to get in that B gap, and he's going to go. So what Schwartz is going to do is that he's going to force these offensive linemen to kick out and block those B and C gaps. And right here is a great look at the Seahawks last year. They're in a wide 3 and a wide 5, something you're going to get from Schwartz, like I said. So again, this is just a clear pass rush. Most of his pass rush game plan deals with his hands, clubs, and ribs and swims. He plays with great leverage. He's always slow. Again, he's very, very good at reacting to what the offensive lineman is going to do. He understands down and distance. He understands schemes. He's a very, very good NFL 3 technique that comes with a lot of upside and kind of fills that last gap that the Browns need on their defense. This is just a wide 3. This is what you're going to see him do on third down with Cleveland this fall.
The other thing is another veteran guy. He's been in the league. I believe this is his 9th season. So you got him, you got Tomlinson. You finally have guys that the younger defensive tackles can kind of pick their brain and see the nuances of playing that position in the NFL. When you had so many young guys, you didn't. It's like, who are they supposed to follow and get the tricks of the trade from?
One thing my opinion is the defense and offensive lineman. It's like a freshman going into college. You know, you're an 18-year-old freshman, and you have to play with these 22-year-old linemen. And skill guys can kind of get away with it with their footwork and things like that. But as linemen, those are grown men. It's very much the same case in the NFL. They come in as 22-year-old young guys or young men. These 25, 28, 26, 27, 28-year-old guys are just more seasoned. They're bigger, they're stronger, they're grown. So they're just able to hold their gaps better. They're able to understand how the blocking schemes are in the NFL a little bit. When you're a defensive lineman in college, you're just better. You're bigger and better, and you don't have to rely on a lot of technique all the time, especially these guys who are not drafted in the first, second round. Now these guys, the Elliott's, the Ikas, these guys can develop a little bit and kind of learn from these guys in front of them. Again, I think this is a tremendous pickup for Cleveland.
Well, the other thing that we keep hearing about is positional flexibility. We've heard it with some of the people on the back half. You've heard it with Zadarius Smith. Is this something that Shelby Harris brings as well?
I think I really like about him is that I think he can play that 9 technique if you get a tight end. So a lot of times you're going to get a tight end in there. They're going to run to that tight end. I think he's flexible enough, along with Zadarius, obviously Miles. But, having those young guys being injured, I think he's a guy who can fill in, especially against these teams that like to have the power run game. Those guys that like to have a tight end and a wing, and they like to run that power to the tight end. They're going to get that tray block with the big double team with the tight end and the tackle. So I think his flexibility with his footwork, his lateral quickness, his ability to explode. Yeah, I think he can be a guy. And then he's a guy also that you can flip outside at times. He gives you another rotational guy outside until those young guys, one, get healthy, and the next, kind of learn their trait and get better at their craft. But yes, a guy with great position flexibility, finding matchups. Schwartz is more about matchups than he is, what is your exact position. So, again, a guy who fits in great, a veteran. This defensive line is, on paper, is as good as it gets. Now they got to go out and do it, which I think they will.
And here's that the last clip, and that shows some of that positional flexibility that you're talking about.
See him on the bottom screen. He's the one who hits the quarterback, but he's lined up at the defensive end. And obviously, it's a 3rd and goal, a 3rd and long look here, and he does a good job of just kind of collapsing everything. Now, he doesn't have a massive bend or anything like that like Myles Garrett, but what he does is he uses his hands very well, and he gets to shoulders very well. And he's just heavy, and he's just active. He's a run stopper first. And what the Browns need to do, like all football teams, especially with the Browns, though, they have Myles Garrett, they have Zadarius Smith, and they have Okoronkwo. These guys are elite pass rushers, but you don't get the pass rush unless you stop the run on first down. And now with these guys, Tomlinson, now you have Shelby Harris, now you have veteran guys who can get to that 2nd and 3rd and long. He's just a real load in there. He's a guy you got to account for. Like I said, this defensive line is now complete. Now they got to go play.
Yeah, and when you look at it, they've built it out. You've got Myles Garrett, you've got Zadarius Smith, Tomlinson, Shelby Harris, you throw in Okoronkwo. It has the makings of a defensive line that no quarterback wants to face because all those guys get off the ball really quick.
Yeah, and then, the one thing they're going to do, too, is that now they're going to protect. Now they have guys who can protect those linebackers. Those linebackers are still undersized, even though JOK looks a lot thicker at practice. Those first 4 days of practice, he's looked a lot thicker. He looks a lot heavier, especially his lower half. But now these guys get to do – you saw a lot of it in practice. You've seen Tony Fields do a bunch. You've seen these guys. They run around now because they're just cleaning up. They're cleaning up the mess that defensive line is making. And that's what you're seeing a lot of in practice is that there's a different energy with the defensive line. They're playing in the backfield. There's some guys that are first-level talent now. And then the Browns have some guys, like I said, like Jordan Elliott. Now he can kind of work on his craft and get better and learn from these guys. And he physically looks better, too. And then Ika, who they drafted, and some other guys, Hurst, Hill, there's some guys there that have some potential to kind of create a rotation because Schwartz wants a lot of guys in the rotation.
Lance Reisland, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Lance.
As always, thanks for having me.
Lance Reisland, make sure you check him out. Really good stuff with the film analysis video breakdown, cleveland.com, as well as the Plain Dealer. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, Randy Gurzi from Dog Pound Daily. We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Browns getting ready for that second preseason game. It'll be at home against Washington Commanders. Earlier today, Andre Snelling's Amber Wilson from ESPN Radio. Is this a make or break season for the Browns?
I don't think it's quite make or break in that sense. I do expect Watson to be better because there was a time he came out in the same draft class with Mahomes, and there was a time when the two of them were, which one is better? Which one is the one you would build around for the future? So I think that has to still be in there somewhere. The rust is going to wear off. But the Browns have the feel, to me, of a team that's building. You know, they're not a team that's been there for a few years, and if they don't break through, then it's going to be a problem. So I don't think it's quite make or break, but I do expect them to be better.
I actually think that it could be make or break just in terms of changes there for Cleveland, but it ain't make or break when it comes to Deshaun Watson. I mean, you were stuck, right? I mean, that
he's
dude
already
could go
made
out.
it.
Well, yeah, he made it in terms of his bank account. That dude could go out and be the worst quarterback in the National Football League. And what? Right? I mean, $230 million guaranteed dollars for 5 years, Andre. Yeah. So we're a year into that experience. So absolutely, there will not be changes at the quarterback position there for Cleveland. I don't know about the personnel changes being so significant. That coaching staff might be feeling some pressure there for the Browns. Kevin Stefanski going into his fourth season. He is 26-24 after going 11-5 in his first year. So I do think that makes a big difference. When we're talking about changes, it might be his seat that's hot, not Deshaun Watson's.
With that, let's welcome in Randy Gurzi from Dog Pound Daily. And Randy, I get the thought, but I've said this pretty much all along. Kevin Stefanski's a couple games over 500 with, by all accounts, mediocre to poor quarterback. The guy that was the starting quarterback, that was #1 overall, is in a battle to win a starting job in Tampa Bay with Kyle Trask. And he had Jacoby Brissett. So you've been over 500 with quarterbacks that aren't very good. I think that's the story.
I love hearing your passion in it because I feel the exact same way. I get a little bit frustrated when I hear people just kind of, talking about Deshaun Watson or Kevin Stefanski and being on the hot seat. I guess if he's underachieved, he's the winningest coach that they've had since coming back in the league in 1999, and people are ready to run him off just because that's what they're used to. They're used to coaches getting fired when you don't win a Super Bowl. But he's building something. Him and Andrew Berry work really well together. They built a very talented roster, and you're absolutely right. You had Baker Mayfield, and you were winning with him. And now he can't hold down a job. He's been on 3 teams since leaving Cleveland. And you have Jacoby Brissett, who so far, by all accounts, we'll see him tonight, but so far, by all accounts, he's not beating out Sam Howell. So Stefanski has the winningest record since coming back in the league in 1999, and he's done it with mediocre quarterbacks. So I don't think his seat's hot by any means.
No, and I'm very curious to see what he does with Deshaun Watson with an entire season and the ability to kind of craft an offense around Watson's skill set. That's what I want to see from him. If I see his offense tailored around Deshaun Watson, the Browns probably have their guy that's going to be here a little bit. This is also kind of along those same lines of thought. One reason every NFL team shouldn't be overlooked in 2023. This is from the Bleacher Report. For the Browns, finally a full season of Deshaun Watson, still just 27 years old and the 3rd highest rated qualified passer in NFL history. With quality offensive line, quite a lot of defensive talent, there's no telling what Cleveland could do if Watson is back on track. And Randy, I've asked this a couple of times this week. I can't remember a guy that was 27, 28 years old, who has been to 3 Pro Bowls, who has missed a season or, it hasn't had a severe injury that's fallen off the face of the earth. Now, Deshaun Watson's time off are his own doing, but to think he's going to fall completely down to the dregs of, I just don't understand how that makes sense.
No, and in addition to that, one of the things they didn't mention in there is the fact that they've actually even built more offensive talent around him. Yeah, the offensive line's healthy again. Hopefully that they're going to hold up, do their job. But then you throw Elijah Moore, Cedric Tillman out there, and as well as Jordan Akins. He's got all the weapons to be good. Last year they built their team to be a run-first offense and to kind of, you had a game manager at quarterback. But now you've got those playmakers out there and guys that could do some serious damage with a quarterback who has proven himself time and again in the NFL. So, yeah, I don't see – I would be surprised if Watson does have a, tremendous fallback or anything like that. I think he's going to be just fine.
Yeah, and people have mentioned Michael Vick, and Michael Vick was a different kind of quarterback. He's a guy that went away and then came back. He was not as good of a passer, but a freakishly talented runner and athlete.
And he ended up having an MVP caliber season in 2010. So he, took a little while to get the rust off, but as soon as it did, he was just as electric, and he earned another $100 million contract, which was, the huge deal at the time back then. So, we've seen guys that had to take time off and come back and do it. And I think Watson will do that. I think last year, those 6 games that he played were significant. I know he didn't look great, but those were huge because he knocked some of that rust off. So he's not going to say that he's going to be himself in week 1, but those 6 games have kind of sped the process along.
And again, he wasn't great in those 6 games. He was kind of below what we expected. They were still 3-3 in those games. So, the bottom line is he's got to find a way to win football games. Along the lines of what we're talking about the roster and building it out around him. This is from Mike Clay from ESPN. He does a thing where he ranks the position groups of all the teams in the NFL. And we're going to look at a couple of them. We looked at a couple of them earlier. Offensive line, Browns are ranked 2nd, Eagles are ranked 1st. When you look at the running back, this one I take a little bit of exception with. They have the Browns ranked 7th. They have San Francisco 1, Atlanta 2, Detroit 3, Tennessee 4, Green Bay 5, and Seattle 6. And then we'll do the wide receiver group. They have the Browns kind of towards the bottom half of the middle. They're at 19 there. They have the Saints, the Ravens ahead of them, which I'm not buying the Ravens, the Steelers as well. Let's go back. The offensive line, by all accounts, that's going to be one of the better groups, provided they can stay healthy. The running back, you only play one of them. Yeah, it's not like guys play 2 and 3 running backs very often. Nick Chubb's the best running back. If you want to tell me Christian McCaffrey, I'll listen to it. Other than that, they're much better, much more effective than the 7th group just because of Nick Chubb.
Yeah, I think they're putting a little too much stock in the depth there, and they probably looked at it as, Kareem Hunt left, so they fell off a bit. But, it's like you said, Nick Chubb's the best in the NFL right now. I think him alone puts you in the top 3 if you want to say that, 49ers, Titans, somebody like that might have a better actually, I don't think the Titans have better backups, but if you want to say somebody has some better backups than the Browns do, perhaps. But, yeah, Nick Chubb is going to be the one carrying the ball the majority of the time. I think we're seeing kind of a committee thing. We will have a 3rd down back out there occasionally. But I think, Stefanski's been pretty real back, so it's going to be Chubb, and they're going to get back in the NFL.
And Randy, the wide receiver group, he ranks at 19. Again, I get there's some unproven guys at the back end of that, but I think Amari Cooper is undervalued and underappreciated, in part because he doesn't sit there and scream and create a lot of drama like most wide receivers.
Yeah, I think because he's so quiet, people, I just often assume he's not a great wide receiver, which is a really weird thing because you get annoyed with the loud and, the just monstrous receivers like an Odell Beckham, who I agree with you. I don't think that the Ravens need to be ahead of them. I think, that their wide receiver corps is not very good. But yeah, Amari to me he's a legit number 1 wide receiver in the NFL. Donovan Peoples-Jones more than proved himself last year. And then you have Elijah Mitchell, who I think part of the reason that they're ranked so low is I think people still are not giving him his due. They think that, the struggles that he kind of had in his 2nd season with the Jets just basically means that he's not a good player, when it was really just a poor fit with an offense that really wasn't doing very well. So I think that they have, some weapons. Cedric Tillman showed in the first preseason game that he can play too. So yeah, I think 19 is a bit low for them.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see what they do with Elijah Moore from the Jets as well. What are you watching in the preseason game for the Commanders? What do you want to see? What are you keeping your eye out for?
Of course, the big thing right now is going to be Deshaun Watson. They said he's going to play, so you just want to see how he looks. And I don't think it's imperative that he goes out there and puts on the board and just dominates. I think what you really want to see is just kind of what command does he have of the offense? Does he look comfortable? Does the offensive line look like they can protect him? Does he look like he, is trusting what he's seeing out there on the field and making quick decisions? I think that's really what you want to see. You just want to see how comfortable does he look? How efficient does he look? Is he looking better than he did at the end of last season? Outside of that, I want to see a little bit more of, some of the backup running backs to see what they're doing. And I'm pretty sure everybody wants to see more DeJuan Jones after what he did last week. So those are probably the main things I'm looking at.
Who's really impressed you that kind of is coming out of, I don't want to say out of nowhere, but guys that you were like, oh, that guy looks like he can play a little bit?
Tony Fields. I've always liked Tony Fields, but I think he really stepped up in that game. He was kind of the leader of the defense last week. And then Caleb Biggers played really well at cornerback, the rookie from Boise State. That's a really deep group there. And, you were kind of looking at guys like, Cameron Mitchell and AJ Green, and, kind of wondering how they're going to fit in the roster. And then Biggers was kind of the one that went out there and, showed the most poise and the most confidence playing last week.
The other thing that it will be interesting to see, Kevin Stefanski, when he talked about it, said before the Jets game, they talked about working on their screen game. There will be something that they want to get game reps at with the first team offense. I'm curious as to see what that looks like. They're not going to show a lot, but you'll get an idea of some of the ways this offense is going to be tweaked by what they do.
Yeah, and I think that's the big thing people are going to have to remember. It's exactly what you said. They're going to try to get some reps in game time situations there. So it's going to be something that, hey, we want to use this in the regular season, so we're just going to try it out there. They're not really going to be trying everything they can to go and put points on the board. It's let's try this look. Let's see how this look goes. Let's see how this set works. So put any points on the board, you want to see some confidence for that offense. But I did see last week, I don't know if it was by design, it seemed like Kellen Mond wasn't pushing it down the field, but it did seem like they worked on the screen game a lot more last week than what we're used to seeing.
Randy Gurzi from Dog Pound Daily and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll talk a little bit more about the preseason game coming up, as well as what to expect moving forward as training camp continues. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns with Randy Gurzi from Dog Pound Daily. Three things that the Shelby Harris deal tells us about the Browns. Harris, the defensive tackle who the Browns signed officially yesterday. Number three, there could be more surprise signings ahead. Number two, Barry is finally giving up on his draft picks. And number one, the time is now. Randy, I think to me, and I said this yesterday when it was official, basically that Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski aren't going to say we're in win now mode, but they're showing you they're in win now mode. I think about it, a year ago, the defensive tackle room was horribly unproven, and they didn't really try to fortify it, and it came back to get them. They've learned from that miscalculation.
Yeah, and I think that Joe Woods and Jim Schwartz, the difference there has a lot to do with it as well. I think Woods continued to believe that he could get it done with, basically a bunch of three techs, just guys that are going to come in there and bring some heat as pass rushers and be more quick, athletic kind of defensive tackles. Whereas Jim Schwartz is coming there and is saying, hey, I need to get these guys that can stop the run, and that way we can force teams into passing situations and then unleash guys like Myles Garrett and Okoronkwo. So I think the Schwartz has just as much to do with that, but I definitely agree that they're acting like this is win now mode. I think they know they've got a lot of the right pieces, and they just don't want something like this to make things fall apart on them.
Now, I know you have written an article. What do you think the signing of Harris means for Jordan Elliott? That's a guy, third-round pick that just hasn't progressed the way you would hope.
Yeah, and I think that last week was really telling for Elliott. None of the starters played except for Elliott. He was, listed on the depth chart as a starter, but yet they've had him out there in the Hall of Fame game when nobody else was. So that in itself showed that they weren't 100% sold on him. And then going up against a bunch of backups, he really didn't stand out. He didn't make any big plays. He wasn't getting much push in the run game. So I think that was really telling, and it kind of puts him on thin ice. That, hey, I know you got some guarantees in your contract. But I don't think he's guaranteed to make the roster at this point. So I think he really hurt himself last week.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because that was a guy Jim Schwartz thought was making progress, and you just, if you're going to play in that game against backups, you got to show up. And like you said, he didn't do anything terrible. He just didn't do anything to help himself.
Yeah, and you can kind of see the difference. It's like unfortunate that Alex Wright got hurt, but you could really see him popping on film, that he was kind of having his way with a lot of those backups, and he didn't put up any major stats, but he was kind of bullying some guys and pushing them around a little bit and being a little bit disruptive, whereas Elliott, who's former third-round pick and supposed to be a starter, was just kind of there, and it seemed like they got a little bit more from Siaki Ika when he came in, so it really wasn't a good game for Elliott, and I think they're still going to give him every opportunity to make this team, but he's going to have to really make the most of every snap he gets from here on out.
So this, again, an article that you wrote earlier this week. Biggest questions about the Browns ahead of their second preseason game. Will the Browns' offensive tackles hold up? And also, will Deshaun Watson return to form? And again, we might not get the answer to that, but you would feel pretty good if he goes out and he just looks smooth and athletic, and it's his offense. You want him to look in control, I guess, is the most important thing.
Yeah, as comfortable as he is, or the more comfortable he is in the offense, the better it's going to be for this team. You want him out there. You don't want him thinking. You want him just processing and getting the ball out of his hands, making quick decisions, not having to overthink it. And those two things kind of go hand in hand that you brought up from that article. One is the offensive line holding up, and then two is, how comfortable he is. The clips that you had showed earlier in the day with Watson, you could see him kind of having he couldn't just be comfortable in the pocket. There's a lot of moving around. But with guys like Jack Conklin banged up, Jed Wills had issues with his ankle. Wyatt Teller wasn't 100% for some of the games last year. So I think with that offensive line, if they can hold up and they can get him protected, I think that's going to go a long way as well.
So the other thing is Jerome Ford hamstring injury. So that creates a question. There's Demetri Felton and John Kelly in. Do they go out and get a free agent? We've listed 4 of them from an article you wrote. Dontrell Hilliard, who has a history here, has played here before. Dalvin Cook, big name, big price. Free agent from Minnesota, so there's that connection with Kevin Stefanski. Darrell Henderson Jr., Rams guy, and then Ezekiel Elliott. When you look at those, it doesn't seem like they're in any hurry to go out and get a guy like that, does it?
No, and I even said in there, I wouldn't be sold on somebody like Elliott. I don't Andrew Berry's going to break the bank for Dalvin Cook. I don't think Cook's going to want to play second fiddle right now. I think both of those guys are probably at the point where they're going to hold off and see if has a training camp injury, a more significant one, like a starter goes down or something like that. Darrell Henderson's a guy that I liked. He averages more than 4 yards per carry, and then done really well the past couple of years with Tennessee. So I always just found it interesting that he's still sitting out there. But if they haven't gone out after any of those guys, I think that tells you how the ones that they have. And, being honest, Demetri Felton looked really good in that first preseason game. So I think if he continues to play like that, there's probably no need for panic.
Yeah, John Kelly did too. And Kelly's been a guy that's on the practice squad. And I've said a couple of times this week. If you're on the practice squad for 3 years, they have a pretty good idea they think you can play. You don't keep guys on the practice squad that you don't think can play in the league.
Yeah, he's another one that it really kind of surprises me that nobody's ever picked him off the practice squad, because every time he plays, he does well. He hasn't done a lot in the regular season, but every preseason he's out there and he looks the part. And as you said, he did really well last week also. I mean, he's not, Felton looked a little bit quicker, a little bit more explosive, but Kelly's a guy who's just going to continue to run between the tackles and move the chains. So I don't think that they're going to be panicking at running back unless, one of them just starts to really fall off a cliff.
All right, before I let you go, an article again that you wrote for Dog Pound Daily. 4 bold predictions for the Browns against the Commanders in this preseason game coming up. Number 4, Demetric Felton secures his roster spot with another big day. Number 3, Cedric Tillman scores his first touchdown. Number 2, Cameron Mitchell, the cornerback, gets in on the fun. And number 1, Dorian Thompson-Robinson runs and throws for a touchdown. I'm with you. I didn't know if there was a way Demetric Felton could find his way onto the team way back in minicamp, but he looks like he can play running back in this system pretty well.
Yeah, and he looked a lot more explosive than I remembered him seeing. I think he was just really decisive. And I think going from, in his first couple of years in the league, he was going from running back to wide receiver. And I think in the long run, that might have hurt his development a bit. And you can see this year, fully on running back, and I think he's playing with a lot more confidence. I know he still had some issues in the return game, but the fact that he can do that in a pinch also helps his case for making the roster. And I think he did enough to really put himself as a favorite, and I think if he has another game like that, he's probably going to make the 53-man roster. Tillman
was a guy the thing I said after watching that is he just looks like an NFL wide receiver. And I know his dad is, there's the NFL bloodlines, but he looks like he understands how to play the position at this level.
Yeah, and he had like 3 drives in a row that he ended up resulting in a first down. 2 of them were receptions, and then one of them was he drew the penalty. And even on one of his receptions,
Okay, we're having a little bit of issues with Randy Gurzi. So again, Randy had Cedric Tillman scoring his first touchdown, Cameron Mitchell getting in on the rookie fun, and Dorian Thompson-Robinson running and throwing for a touchdown. And Thompson-Robinson, a guy that's probably played his way right into the quarterback 3 position ahead of Kellen Mond. The rookie 5th-round pick looked really good. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We will see you back here Monday at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you Monday at 4 on Sports for CLE.